Laptop computer spins onto the screen, opens, and displays ATP Education Program webinar series, closes, and then spins off the screen.
Switch control on the iPad basics. So switch control is an assistive technology that helps you enter in text, choose menus, and more, all by simply clicking on a switch. So who benefits from switch control? Persons who may have physical or intellectual disabilities, people who are unable to access an on-screen keyboard, persons with limited motor control, persons who fatigue easily, persons with developmental or cognitive issues. Also, a lot of students and adults with cerebral palsy, people who are paralyzed, people who have traumatic brain injury, people who have motor neuron disease such as ALS, and those who have intellectual disabilities. So you can see a wide range of people will benefit from using switch control. People who have difficulty accessing the on-screen keyboard or some other assistive device that will allow them to be able to access the iPad. So the very typical setup that you're going to look at when you start looking at switch control is you're going to have some sort of a switch. You'll see in this one we have a red button switch. Then you'll also need to have what's called a switch interface, and you'll see that an example of a Tapio in the middle. And then of course you'll need your iPad. So what is a switch interface? A switch interface is basically a device that bridges the gap between a switch and the computer or device's port. So it's the device that basically takes that switch click and converts it over to a keystroke that a computer or an iPad would understand. So the process that you're going to go through when you're starting to look at switch control and switch access is first you're going to determine what is the best access method for the user. Where is it going to be placed at? How easy is it for them to be able to access that? What are some of do they have enough pressure in order to be able to do that? But you're going to determine what is the best way for them to be able to most efficiently hit that switch. The next step you're going to do is you're going to set up the switches, and we'll walk through that on the iPad in just a little bit. We'll set up basic switches. That is that first process of setting up switch control. Then you're going to select the scanning method, and we'll talk about those scanning methods in a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to a quick demo of what the different scanning methods are. And then you're going to configure the settings, and those are settings. There's a lot of configurability within the iPad that you'll be able to set up. And we won't cover that in this basic courses, but those next steps, there's a lot of configurations and a lot of control that you're going to have when you're going to set up switch control. When you're working with switch control, you're going to have specific goals that you can kind of work toward. One of them is you want to move beyond cause and effect. You want to move it beyond the point where they hit the switch and something happens. You want them to very quickly move into making selections, making choices, and being able to have more control of that device. Whenever possible, you want to go to two switches. Two switches is much more efficient, plus it's quicker, as well as gives the user much more ability to choose what selections that are available to them. You always want to focus on the task and not the switch activation, so you don't want to say hit your switch, hit your switch, hit your switch. You're going to want to focus on the action. So, make the dog move, choose your song, you don't want to say hit your switch all the time. You want to focus on that action that you want them to perform. And the last thing is you always want to presume competence. You always want to presume that they know what is going on. They're making choices, and they are very actively in control of that learning process. So always assume that their skill level is high, and that we just need to find the appropriate tools and the appropriate settings to get them to use switch control. So there are three types of switch interfaces when you start working with the iPad that you can use. There are external switches. We'll talk about those. Those require some sort of a switch interface typically. You can actually use the screen on the iPad, where you can actually use the screen as a switch by tapping on the screen. And you can also use the camera that's available on your iPad also to control some of the movements also. So when we talk about the screen, basically it's a single activation where you tap on the screen and it will start that scanning process. You will typically use automatic scanning when you use the screen. You can tap on the full screen, so anywhere on the screen, to be able to start that scanning process and to make a selection. It can also be used with other switch inputs, so you can actually configure other switch inputs to be able to perform an action. So example, maybe you hit the screen in order to start the scanning process, and the second switch you can use to make a selection. It typically will give you access just to that top level menu, just because you're using that whole entire screen and you're going to get that scanning, so that's where it's first going to start. So when we talk about external solutions, there are external sources that are available. You have Bluetooth as well as wired connections that will, or wired switch interfaces that will allow you to be able to access the iPad. And we'll talk about the benefits and the downfalls of each one. So wired, you actually plug right into the charging port on your iPad. And there is a USB that you would utilize typically. There's a USB, but you're going to need to have a specific cable in order to do that. So if you're using some of the older iPads, you're going to use a lightning adapter. So the USB will plug into it, and then it will plug into the iPad. If you're using the newer iPads, you're going to need a USB-C adapter that will allow you to be able to plug in a USB device. Now you'll look at the hook here. The hook actually has just a straight plug-in into the with a lightning connector into the iPad. It doesn't work with the newer iPads, because the newer iPads, the iPad Pros, have the USB-C plug-in. You can use a single switch or multiple switches. Most of them have some sort of an adapter that will allow you to be able to use multiple switches. You can also use an external keyboard. If you have an external keyboard, you can use some of the keystrokes in there to be able to access and control switch control if you want to also. The benefits of having it wired, there's low power consumption. It's lightning fast, which means you hit your switch and it automatically sends that command to the computer. There's no delay that there might be with if you have a wireless solution, so you have a very low latency. There is no Bluetooth pairing. You just basically plug it in and it will start pairing at that point. The drawbacks is you have wires either to your that you're going to be wired into your iPad, but also external wires typically for the switches that you're going to use. Most of the time you cannot charge at the same time like with the Tapio, but with the hook there's actually a spot in there that will allow you to be able to plug in a charger. But not all switch interfaces that are wired will allow you to be able to charge at the same time that you're using that switch interface. With Bluetooth, it's wireless. It'll go up to 30 feet. It's one connection, so you connect up your Bluetooth device. One of the things when you hook up with Bluetooth, however, it does replace your on-screen keyboard. So in order to access your on-screen keyboard, you either have to turn off your Bluetooth device, or some of the Bluetooth devices actually have a button on the side that will allow you to be able to temporarily get to that on-screen keyboard. If you're using a Bluetooth device, a lot of the Bluetooth devices also want you to forget that device before you can configure it up with another device. The benefits, of course, it's wireless, it's mobile. You can charge your device at the same time that you're using your Bluetooth, because that port is free, that charging port is free. Some of the drawbacks is sometimes there might be an issue with range if you're not right up next to your device. It also requires batteries or charging, so you need to make sure your Bluetooth devices are charged. They do drain power because you're using wireless, and it's always trying to figure out how wireless is trying to find out and look for those signals. You can get interference from other Bluetooth devices, so that latency could be a problem. You hit the switch, it might be just a slight delay. And this has gotten better over the years, but also there's tendency to lose its Bluetooth connection, and you need to reconnect up that device. So there's two different types of scanning, or there's several different types of scanning methods. There's auto scanning, step scanning. single switch step scanning, and then there's also scanning that is built into several different apps. Auto scanning, basically you hit the switch and it moves from item to item, and once it gets to the item you want, you hit the switch, and that's all based on timing. So you hit the switch and you wait till it gets to where you want, you hit the switch to make that selection, and then it will continue that scanning process. Where step scanning, you require a switch, you hit your switch, and it will move, you'll hit that switch and it continually will move every time you hit that switch. When it gets to the item that you want, you're going to hit that second switch to activate it. So it's much more efficient and quicker depending on the motor control of the user who's using the switch control. But you want to move to switch scanning or step scanning wherever possible. Gives you much more flexibility and much more efficiency. The single switch step scanning, we don't use this a lot because it takes quite a bit of getting used to. Basically, you hit the switch, and as long as you're holding that switch, it's going to continually move. When you take it off, it'll wait for a specific amount of time and will automatically make a selection. So once it's off the item within focus, it'll actually activate. So the last portion of this, we're going to just show you how to configure up switch control. This is going to be in your handout. One of the things that you want to do when you start hooking up switch control is set up an accessibility shortcut. And this will allow you to be able to easily get in and out of switch control without having to navigate through menus. So you're going to want to go to settings, you're going to want to go to accessibility, then accessibility shortcut, and you're going to want to hit switch control. And what that will allow you to be able to do is to triple click that home button at any time to turn on and off switch control. That way you don't have to go through all the menus in order to do that. It'll save you a lot of frustration and time if you do turn on switch control and you want to get out of it. So switch control can be found in settings, accessibility, under switch control. One of the things with like the hook from AbleNet, Apple does have an auto switch configuration. So when you plug in a switch interface that has switch ports on it, with certain devices, it'll automatically configure your device. So if you have one switch plugged into it, it's going to set it up for automatic scanning. If you have two switches in there, it's automatically going to hook it up or set it up for switch control step scanning. So again, that's one of the Apple's auto switch configuration. So basically, setting up switches, I'll walk through this real quick and then we'll set up a switch. You're going to make sure you have configured up your Bluetooth device, or if you plugged in a wired device, it's ready to go. You're going to set up one switch if you're going to use automatic scanning. If you're going to use step scanning, you're going to set up two. So the instructions will walk you through how to do that, but I'll walk you through real quickly on how we're going to do that. The last thing is it automatically takes a streamlined first page that is really set up for beginning users, so it has a limited amount of items you can choose from. If you want to give more menu control or more options for a user, you would go to switch control, accessibility switch control, menu items, top level, and you would turn off show streamlined first page. Okay, and then there's a resource page. So let's set up switch control real quickly here. I'm going to go into settings. I'm going to go into Bluetooth, and I'm going to have to set up my Bluetooth device. We'll wait for it to pop up on the bottom here. There we go. I'm going to select that. I'm going to pair it, and now my Bluetooth device is available. So I'm going to go back over into go down to accessibility, and I'm going to go down to switch control. And I'm going to go to switches, and I'm going to configure my new switch. So I add a new switch. It's an external switch because I'm using a Bluetooth device. And I'm going to activate my first switch. So I'm hitting my button on the Bluetooth, and it's going to call, what do I want to call this? I'm going to use this as my movement switch, and I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to have it move to the next item. Then I'm going to add my second switch, which is going to be a select switch. So I'm going to go in as external. I'm going to activate my switch, and I'm going to call this one select. Save. And then that's going to be my select item. And now I've configured up my two switches, and I'm ready to go. The last thing that you want to do is when you, by default, it's always going to be automatic scanning, which means you're going to hit that switch and it's going to move from item to item at 1 second intervals. But I'm going to set mine up for step scanning. Whoops, I'm sorry. Manual scanning. Okay, and then I'm going to turn on switch control. And as you will see when I hit my button, I'm moving from item to item. When I want to select something, I hit it. I'm going to go down and come to this item, and I'm going to go home. I'm moving, selecting, move, select. And now I'm at home. So that.
Thank you for watching. For more information on the ATP education program, please visit our website at atp.nebraska.gov/education or email us at atp.education@nebraska.gov.